Assalamu alaikum and welcome. I'm your host Rashid Al Hawli and this is the Muslims in Tech podcast. Today we have special guest Hamza Khan with us today. And Hamza started out his career at Servian in Melbourne. Throughout his time at Servian, he secured 2 promotions in just 8 months. With his project experience ranging from analytics to machine learning to data engineering, he eventually got a job at Linktree, a high-profile Australian startup. And in that, he played a pivotal role scaling a data platform that served over 50 million users and led technical side as the lead of the data platform team. Now in his new role at Montu, he leads the data platform, fostering connections between producers and consumers. Parallel to that, Hamza, since 2020, has successfully run an e-commerce business, delivering thousands of products to satisfied customers, which I'm sure we'll get to throughout the podcast. Hamza, thank you for coming on the podcast. And welcome.
Thank you.
So I think a good place to always start in these things is, how did you get to where you are today? Where did it all start for you?
Maybe we talk like 10 years ago. I can take you back. So that's where maybe my journey started on transition. And it's a really interesting story because a lot of times we think, I guess like a few years ago, if I look back now, you make a plan and then you're like, maybe I would do this.
Yeah.
But then there's always a plan that works better. Yeah. It's like eventually works out. 10 years ago, like I started uni. I was like mech eng. I really wanted to do that. And I was really, really, really keen on that. And I was really good in high school and I did really well. But then when I got into uni, I really, really was bad at I guess mech eng. I didn't do that well. I barely passed uni.
Is that like the maths side or was it just different subjects?
I think maths and physics I was really good in high school. So I was naturally, maybe mech eng is probably something that I should do.
Yeah.
It was a 3+2 year program as well. So I went to Melbourne Uni. And then naturally when you pass your 3 years, you get into masters and mech eng. So it was I think they used to call it Melbourne model. Yeah.
Yes. We all went through that.
Yeah. So, but then when I did my 3 years, I eventually finished the 3-year degree in 4 years. Failed a bunch of subjects along the way. And then when I finished, I think my average was towards the end 57 or 58. So you needed a minimum of 65 to get into masters. So
which masters is this?
Mechanical engineering.
Which
is why I signed up from the start. So when I had 59 or 58, I was like, I can't really, they wouldn't, I tried a lot, but they wouldn't really, let me into my masters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, alhamdulillah, in really thinking about it, I think that was really good because I wanted to do that. But then, it's good that Allah had a separate plan. So it's really good. But then I didn't really know what to do. At that time, actually, I was in Harvey Norman. I was working there. And I was actually doing really well in Harvey Norman. Harvey Norman also has a career pathway where you start as a sales person.
Yeah.
And then eventually you go through the ranks of selling products and stuff. And then eventually you can become a franchisee. Which how that model works in Harvey Norman is that you sort of have part ownership of the business together with Harvey Norman.
As the franchise model.
Yeah. Franchise model. But you don't have to... It's a little bit different to buying a franchise from Macca's or KFC because in Macca's, KFC or Subway or whatever, if you buy a franchise or a fuel station, you have to pay X amount to get that franchise licensing and all that.
Yes.
Whereas here, you don't actually pay anything to become a franchisee. You're sort of, you can think of it at another store as a store manager, but here you also get equity.
So you're not fronting up any capital?
No.
Okay.
So based on how you've been doing and getting promoted, and obviously your network and stuff in Harvey Norman as well, you get promoted. So at that time, I was doing really well at Harvey Norman, and there's a program before you become a franchisee known as franchisee in training, FIT they call it.
Okay.
And my boss at that time wanted to, and he was really good. I learned so much from him. I still in very good terms with him. So he wanted me to put in that program. So I was sort of should I do my masters of whatever, or should I pursue my education, or should I just continue on with this retail and then become a franchisee and then eventually get a bigger store? And then, because that was also sort of not bad at that time.
So from the beginning, you've been kind of entrepreneurial. You're looking for avenues.
Yeah, I've always been, And during uni as well, during my undergrad, I was always buying, selling cars, flipping stuff, couches, stuff like that.
Nice.
So I always have been trying to start something on my own or try and do little things, crypto and stuff like that during uni. But yeah, so then I was like, I really thought about it. I was like, how this was back in. So when I finished eventually 4 years from 2013 to 2017, that was when that decision, I was like, should I continue my studies or should I really like, continue pursue this and then do that? But just looking at like, and this is like something like just being aware of what was happening in the world, I really thought that maybe technology is a thing that I saw like the way that people buy and shop. For example, at that time, Amazon recently launched in Australia in 2017, and it was already really big in
Okay,
the US
yeah.
as well. And then people purchasing on eBay, this online in general was like growing. So I was like, if I think about myself 10 or 15 or 20 years later, I don't think retail will be such a big thing. People's buying behaviors and things would change.
So brick and mortar is going to be probably uprooted then.
Yeah. So I was like, maybe that's not probably something that will be long-term and sustaining. If I stick to technology, it will just keep on growing. So I was like, maybe instead of, and also at that time I was like, should I do mech eng or technology? And I had a mate of mine, he used to work at that time in Combank as a data scientist.
Okay.
Yeah, so he sort of told me about math and programming. That's mostly what's involved in it. And I was like, I'm good at math and I'm interested in programming. I actually did 2 programming subjects in Melbourne.
I was going to say, did you have any?
Yeah, I did. So one, I did, I think it's called engineering computation. I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
So they teach C at the first time I did it, I remember I got 32 out of 100.
So you did C?
Yeah, I did C. That was my first program.
Second.
So I got like 32-ish out of 100. And then the second time I did it, I think I had 51 or something like that. But I passed. But it was sort of interesting because when I was doing mech eng, it was like, really dry thermodynamics and fluid mechanics and stuff. Whereas programming, when you put something in, you can sort of see the output straight away.
Yeah.
You're building something which you can see instantly. It's like instant feedback and sort of was interesting. So then I decided that, I want to go towards like masters. And I think that was like really like changed my mindset and like things, because doing really bad in uni in undergrad, but then in my masters I went to Monash, and luckily as well at that time Monash was like master of data science. If you're arts background, whatever you've done in your life doesn't matter, as long as you have an undergrad degree and you've passed, you can come in. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
So I went to Monash, I did my masters in data science there.
But why data science?
Because it was like, I guess like maths and programming, there's 2 things that I was interested in, and technology.
Yeah, you could have done your master of IT though.
Yes, I could, but it wouldn't. It didn't really have maths and statistics. I think math was like the main reason why I went to mechanical engineering, and maths and statistics was also the reason why I went into main driver to go towards data science as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because I think I've learned in life like it's good to play on your strengths rather than try and improve your weaknesses.
100%.
So if you're good at something, just continue with it rather than try and improve something that you're weak at.
Something a lot of people fall for. Like you can continuously try and improve like your weaknesses, but if you double down on your strengths, you're likely to do a lot better.
Yeah. So then masters happened, and then I did alhamdulillah really, really well in my masters. It took, I think the first semester I finished, I like really smashed it at that time. I remember I had like a really like 4.0 GPA or something the first semester. Second semester when I started, I got like a job as a tutor teaching the same subjects I did in the first semester.
Okay, nice.
Like one of them was like foundational databases.
Oh yeah, I think you might have even helped me out in that one.
Yeah. So I was like tutoring that for like 2 semesters. So I did really well because I did in the first semester. And also not only that, but it also the way how I got that job. And it's a really important lesson is that networking is really important.
Oh yeah.
So I was really good friends with tutor that was teaching that subject. So then he actually recommended me because there was a position open. He was like, hey, how about you?
Which job is this?
Just as a tutor teaching.
Okay.
In Monash. Monash. So the same subject I did in my first semester, I became a tutor in the next.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was basically through networking, and then I did really well at the. So then finished my masters. During my masters towards sort of the end, there was a lot of like internship opportunities. People were applying. Monash had their own program for internship, but then outside as well, you can apply for graduate programs and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I applied like hundreds of applications. Eventually I got into one, and I went to Brisbane. So that was working.
First, let's hold that thought for a second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take you back a bit to when you were doing sales at Harvey Norman. You probably couldn't see it at the time, but what did you get out of that experience that kind of helped guide you all the way through the rest of your journey?
I think not only I didn't see, yeah, probably that's true that I didn't see at that time. I would say that that experience of Harvey Norman that I have has helped, is still helping me because I think the thing about like any job or anything that you do in life, you can be as technical as possible or as good as you are, but then if you don't really know how to interact with people, talk to people, network, engage, understand, listen, and problem solve, you never would really like, I guess, like be so successful in that career that you want to.
Yeah.
You get to a certain point, but you need that skill. So I think in sales, especially, it's very important to listen, understand, problem solve, and then consult.
Yep.
So, and my first job of consulting is also that sales experience really helped me because you learn how to like, rather than, and I think that's the difference between good and bad salespeople as well. Like some salespeople are really pushy, but some salespeople are really good where they listen and understand rather than trying to sell what they want to. They try to sell you what you really need to.
Yep.
So I think, yeah, like in looking back, I think that experience, and also I would say like even in uni, if this is just advice for someone, like a lot of people think that just doing customer service jobs, you're working at Coles or like a restaurant or whatever, it doesn't help. But if you have a customer facing job and you're really like listening and understanding and improving your communication skills, it will take you a long, long, long way.
And even the conflict resolution that you deal with, you know, ultimately people come from all kinds of backgrounds and people have all kinds of expectations.
100%.
So yeah, learning to navigate that minefield as well just sets you up so much better than someone who has it.
Yeah, I think in uni, if you really want to, if, like two of the best jobs would be working as customer service and then working in sales, because these two things will take you a long, long way throughout your life. And yeah, to your point, like it really, I didn't see it at that time, but then now when I look back and reflected, really, I think it really helped me in my career a lot, especially in consulting. It's super helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go back to your internship after you finished your master's.
Yeah. So I applied for multiple positions. I think the positions that I landed one internship at Suncorp in Melbourne.
Okay. Yeah.
That was sort of like, I think second last semester or last semester, something like that. I think there was, just I had a semester left after that. And then the other one I got Hatch. It's an engineering firm. Basically, they just do big engineering projects. Come back to my mechanical engineering.
So is it like civil engineering projects or is it?
I think mining, mostly like they look after mining companies. So they have civil, they do have some mining, electrical, mechanical, that kind of stuff. So they're not really a technology consulting firm.
Okay, nice.
But more in that. But yes, I had a choice. So should I go to Suncorp or should I go to mining, like sort of, and then it was like in Brisbane as well, and I was in Melbourne. So then again, like that was an interesting decision because I thought that I can be very comfortable and stay here. And from feedback I had from my friends, it would be sort of cruisy doing an internship in Suncorp.
Yep.
And it's a bigger, but then I thought maybe like being uncomfortable is nicer and like going and living in a different place is probably better than like staying in my comfort zone. And I was like, let's go to Brisbane.
Seeking discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like it's very important. Yesterday in Jummah, I was listening to a khutbah. The Imam was saying that, especially Muslims, we have to seek for hardship as well.
Yeah.
So like our life, like being uncomfortable or having hardship is like a good thing. It teaches you a lot of things in life.
Yeah, and not to diss Australia, but I feel like in Australia there is a tendency to just like wanna settle.
Yeah.
Yeah, kick back, chill, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think we do need to push boundaries a bit more.
Yeah. It's okay to be, I guess, uncomfortable. And I think if it's hard to get something, it's nice or better because that means not many people would want to do it. And then that would make you stand out.
Working on hard problems. Yeah. It's also how you attract the best minds.
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went to Brisbane. So I was really good experience, 4 months-ish. Living with like new people, learning, making new friends, working in a different place. Really hot in Brisbane. Yeah, it's crazy.
Much warmer weather.
It's crazy. Yeah, like you stay indoors, especially during the day, and then you sort of came. So, and really humid as well.
Yeah.
And the sun comes out like 4 a.m. So it's like your day is like starting really early. But that was an amazing experience. By the end of it, like there were many people doing internships. I got a job offer from there.
What was your internship in?
In data science.
Data science.
Yeah, data
science.
Okay.
And Can you detail some of the projects you worked on?
I worked on one project, so it was a forecasting project. So
Okay.
one of the companies, an interesting problem is that whenever, so they're mining companies and they have goods that they import and I think they export as well. So they have an interesting shipping problem where they need to forecast how long a ship would stay in a certain port, because if they don't forecast correctly, two things can happen. One is if they stay longer than expected at a port, they have to pay something called the specific term for it, but they have to pay like a fine or fees to the port.
Yeah.
And also, if they don't forecast correctly, then basically they cannot upkeep to their orders.
Yep.
So yes, it's just the classic forecasting problem. So we had to take, and in mining or in those industries, there's no use of technology at all. So getting data and really doing that is really a nightmare.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really say that we were able to efficiently forecast, but it was a good experience firsthand dealing with. So in uni, you always deal with like sort of, fake data, not really, proper data. But like it was the first experience taking in like actual data, trying to understand it. We couldn't really do any ML, machine learning model, any of the fancy stuff, but really we were able to extract a lot of insights that they didn't really have before. So they had a lot of visibility around, and that's, I guess, like the first step in any data project.
How much time did you spend cleaning the data?
Probably, how much time first to get
Collecting,
data?
yeah.
Because like, again, like in these companies, there's very strict compliance law in getting data and security and stuff like that. So there's a process where you have to wait to get the data, and then yes, just spending time to clean the data itself can take up to like maybe like 2 to 3 weeks, trying to understand it further and then visualizing it and stuff like that. So it can take a good like 2 to 3 months to like execute anything like that for a bigger company.
Yeah.
It's different in startups, but like for a big corporate like that, it can take some time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like the project. It was myself. There was another. We had 2 team members, and then we were under this like data science lead, not lead, she was like a senior data scientist in the team there. So she was mentoring us, and then there was myself and another data science intern, and then we had another software engineer. She was like helping us, like I guess like other parts of the project.
Yep.
Not really directly data sciencey. So yeah, we did that, and then towards the end, it was like stay in Brisbane. But then I think like a month before my internship end, again like another tutor of mine used to started a job in Serbian. So
Nice.
then he was like, the Serbian and, all this like company, and I looked up Serbian, looked like an interesting consulting firm. Actually, I don't really think like at that time I understood what consulting is but it was like Serbian. I wanted to come back to Melbourne, and it was like very specific to data. It was a data consulting only.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, the project that I'll be working on data, and maybe when I go there, because in Hatch, I was a little bit, I guess this is important as well. When you're a data science student, you think that the first problem that you saw when you go there, you will be working on this amazing AI, ML, machine learning use cases and stuff like that. So I was kind of a little bit disappointed in like Hatch as well, working there, because one, the project moved really slowly. I was a little bit bored towards the end, and also I was like, I want to do all these cool things, but I couldn't, because like I guess like the data's not there, or like they just don't have the use case for it.
Yep.
But I was like, maybe if I go to Serbian, it would be different. So anyway, he's like, do an interview. So I did the interview from there. I got a job offer from Serbian. And then, I was like, do I stay there or do I go back to Melbourne? So I was like, maybe I'll come back to Melbourne rather than staying in Brisbane.
Okay. So I want to highlight the point there of networking, especially because we had a webinar with you not long ago. And the one big thing that comes up all the time is, students trying to prepare themselves for life after university pretty much.
Yeah.
So what's your best take for students whilst they're at university looking to land internships or a graduate position after they're done?
Yeah. If I go back to my uni experience, so both of my first job as a tutor, first job as a tutor, other job offers that I got during uni, there was other job offers I had when I had like the batch one, and also Serbian. Let's just stay in uni, because everything after that also I got through networking. I never really applied.
There you go.
Had to apply for a job after that. So all these 3 things I got through networking, and I think like if you're like, maybe one thing that was different, because I didn't actively had this in my mind, but if I like sort of do a retro and go back to like what I did at that time. I think and maybe this could be because of my experience with sales and customer service and talking to people and making relationship, that I always had really good. So when you come in class, so you have a tutor, there are like many students and they take many classes, but there's only a few people that stand out or they do remember or they have good terms with.
Yeah.
So I think if I think about my first job that I got as a tutor, because I had really good relationship and network with my tutor, and it was not really transactional that, hey, I come to class and then I just talk to him and then we talk about like, problems and then whatever, like I'm learning or he's teaching me and then go, but more so like understanding or talking to them and what interests them, which is like an important aspect as well of networking. Is it doesn't have to be transactional all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe that's something that helped me, because they were like, okay, this student is good, at the same time he can communicate and he has a good relationship as well with students, and also he's someone I remember.
Yep.
So more likely that person would then recommend you for a job or something like that. So I think, starting off earlier, networking that way would be probably really important. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's sort of, I'm thinking about what I did and what maybe helped stand out.
Look, I can just talk from my own experience, in the sense like I was one of those people who used to go into class, leave class.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't even know the tutor that I was with for the whole term.
Yeah.
And then I don't think that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't until like towards the end of my masters, I'm like, maybe I should start making the most of some of these opportunities available. Start speaking to people and getting to know some people. But yeah, I think you're right on the money, in the sense that, when you get in there, especially like your tutors often, especially at university, can open doors for you that you don't really know about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And other aspects of networking during uni I did is I went to all the career expo stuff that happened.
Yeah.
And also, if you look around, a lot of the bigger companies, like if you look at like bigger consulting, Deloitte and those kind of big four,
Yep.
and like other companies as well, big companies, they hold so many networking events all the time.
Yes.
So even if it doesn't make sense to you, I would still say go there to understand, not with the intention of to get a job, but with the intention of what do I need to focus on, so that when I finish my uni, this is what I would, need to know. Because technology is moving really, really, really fast.
Yeah.
And you starting in year one, so what it will be in year 3 or 4 will be very significantly different.
Yep.
So just attending those conferences, making connections, you never know where you can land. And I think another important thing is, like, in networking, I never really think that my intention was to get a job. My intention was not not being transactional.
Yeah.
It was never like, I want to get a job. Like, I want to do this because I just want to know you better, or I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Or like, I just want to be like, I don't want to know the person who is teaching me, rather than it being like, and I was obviously very interested in studies and stuff like that, and there would be common topics we can talk about, because yeah.
The thing is, like, even now, like, you can see right through it.
Yeah, exactly.
When people are being transactional, like, I appreciate, sometimes people are in difficult circumstances, they need help, or, they need to land a job, especially international students.
Yep.
Like, they do really tough.
Yeah.
But it really kind of grinds on my nerves when someone is just like super transactional.
Yeah.
And don't see beyond, like, you help me get to this place, and then it's finished.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I think connecting with people on a human level definitely goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So we're talking about you getting your internship.
Yep.
Moving over to Servian.
Yep.
What was Servian like?
Oh, Servian was an amazing experience. I think really helped. Like, I think as a foundation for my career, or where I am today, I think Servian played a huge part, because in IT or technology, whatever field that may be, software DevOps, whatever you do, it's very, there used to be a term used by one of my like bosses there, is that you need to know how to fish.
Yeah.
So what Servian really taught us is how to solve problems on our own, given whatever technology or whatever issue that you might come across, really knowing and understanding and then solving the problem themselves. So it's not really about like the technology you use or what problem you're solving. It really teaches you how to problem solve. So I think an amazing experience that I got out of Servian is how to basically like solve problems technology wise, really go deep. And Servian was like is a technology firm, which is very different to Hatch, because Hatch was focused on engineering, mining, and that, where Servian was focused on technology. So there was a lot of internal training going on all the time, teaching us and upskilling us into sort of new technologies. And then at the same time, the projects that we were working on were very cutting edge as well.
Nice.
And it was unlike, it's always like, I guess like this on like Deloitte's and KPMG, because unlike, you know, we going in and sitting down and for months creating strategies, documents, stuff like that. It was from day one, it was like go implement on the job, like on the tools from day one.
Yep.
So yeah, it was really good experience. And yeah, so I started off that within like 6 months. And I think like when I got the job as well during the interview, I did not get the job because, so Servian has a very strict, I don't know how it is now, but Servian has a really strict entry requirements. So you have to do a lot of technical tests.
Okay.
To get into. So I think I had like 4 interviews, to get into Servian.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was like, but I think I barely passed one and I failed the second one. But I guess like to your point earlier, the reason why I got the job is because they saw that like I could talk, listen, and understand, and my speaking I was just like, my soft skills were good. So they were like, okay, we know that you're not that strong in terms of tech, but then we know that you have at least what they needed at that time. But we know that you can sort of engage and your soft skills are good. So we know that there's a lot of customer client facing work. So then let's give you the opportunity. I remember distinctly, like in my final interview, one of the partners take your interview, and he mentioned that, you know, like I've seen across all that, but then I really appreciate like how your communication skills are, so I want to give you the opportunity. So I was like, okay, that's pretty good.
There you go, yeah. And especially in tech, like, you know, it's very hard. Like the ones that can communicate stand out.
Yeah. So he was like, okay, we'll give you so then I came back. I had a semester left, but I still that was a really hard semester because I was working full time.
Oh, wow.
And but I only had 2 units left. So I finished my 2-year degree in 2.5-ish. So I split that up because I knew I sort of got an internship.
Yeah.
But it was really tough because I had to finish Servian, go back to uni, finish that, come back. It was a very tough, very, very tough semester because going from the city, then going back to Monash, which is in Caulfield, and then from there going back to like west, where I used to live.
Oh my God.
It was very tough.
Spend all day on the roads.
Yeah, it was very, very tough. And then finding time to study.
Yep.
I guess at that time I wasn't really bothered about my GPA anymore.
Yep.
But I was still like had to finish, and it was final year projects, so it's like hard as well. Yeah.
Oh yes, there is. What's that called again? The ID.
IT something.
Yeah, something like that. Some IT project based stuff.
Yeah, project. Yeah, so it's like hard, like spending time there, and then so it's very tough. But then alhamdulillah, I finished. And first 6 months was really good. The first, I guess, like project that I worked on, again, my expectation was that I would be working on, because I'm a data scientist, I was working on this ML cool project. But the first project they put me on was like, I remember distinctly my first day, one of the partners came in and he's like, hey Hamza, do you know how to use Tableau? I said, no, I don't. He said, okay, like learn, next week you're going to the client. And I was like, okay, cool. And then he sort of...
So what's Tableau, just so people understand?
Tableau is a tool used for data visualization. So what that means is that, like, say you have a lot of data in an Excel file and you want to look at insights. You can look at a Excel file and look at numbers, but like just columns and rows don't really make sense.
Okay.
There's a way to nicely, artistically, let's say, represent it. So one of the tools for that, which is data visualization, is one of the tools is Tableau. You can do that.
Yep.
So he came to me and then he's like, do you know how to... I said, no. He said, no worries, like take 1 week. And then Serving, they have a lot of resources, Udemy and all that, like free courses, however many you want to do. He pointed me to 3 or 4.
Yeah.
He paired me with like another senior sort of engineer. And then like 1 week later, I was like, my first project was in Australia Post.
Using Tableau.
Using Tableau, yeah.
So you spend all your time in Tableau?
Yeah, all my time in Tableau. So it was like, I guess, a little bit different because not just Tableau, because you have to prep the data.
That's what I was going to ask.
So you get access to the data, you have to prep the data. It's a lot of stakeholder meetings to understand what they want to visualize and look at as well. And then when it comes to like data visualization, especially in companies, you're building reports, for example, for different levels of people. So let's say if we take an example of Australia Post, the way that someone in a fulfillment center would look at a report is very different to someone who would be a GM level report
Yeah.
or a C or a CEO or like a group level who has multiple fulfillment centers under them.
Yep.
So what that project really taught me, I spent I think maybe 3, 4, 6 months, but there's a lot of other stuff that I learned as well because we had to prep the data using Python and CI/CD and Google Cloud and all that. It was really good experience. It was not just, but primarily my focus was on that. But what that really taught me is like how to, and again, there's another sort of lesson in there as well, is that you're like, oh, you know, I just go and work on Tableau. But if you really want to make the most out of the opportunity, if you really think about what I can get out of it and try to make most out of it, that was good. So what I really learned from there was like, because when I was saying you have to build different reports for different people, I had to engage with everyone from all the way to a GM level person to all the way.
So GM is general manager.
Yeah, general manager. So you can think of an Australia Post general manager, someone really high up.
Yeah.
In a big company like Australia Post. So engaging with them, talking to them, understanding them, listening to them firsthand, and then building something for them, taking the feedback. So that engagement was like an amazing experience because you get to understand how important their time is, what they really want, to really understand how can I build something to like really solve their problem.
Yeah.
All the way going down to someone at a fulfillment center or just the Australia Post. When you go in, they need their reports as well.
Yeah.
So how do they think of versus what requirements do they have? Yeah. So that was like quite cool.
100%. It's like you're addressing any audience. Like you got to know, you got to bring yourself to the level of the audience.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's at GM or it's at the worker level at the fulfillment center.
Yeah. Yeah. So important thing was like, instead of focusing on I want to do, you know, this, rather than say what can I get out of what I have now, and then if you're good at what you've done in there, then you naturally the next opportunity will come.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's like first 4 to 6 months, I think I spent 3-4 months I spent in Australia Post.
But just you mentioned something with regards to like you were working in Tableau, but you were also doing, especially for data prep.
Yeah.
So I know you use Python, probably pandas.
Yeah.
And then you said CI/CD and using Google Cloud. What was that all about?
So if you think of data in organizations, there is you would hear the cloud, you're the cloud all the time, like they have data on the cloud. But bigger companies, startups and companies, bigger companies are different. So now startups, for example, they have everything on the cloud from day one.
Yeah.
But whereas like if you think of corporates, banks, I've worked across many projects in banks as well. They have some data in what we call on-prem. On-prem is basically, you can think of like, it could be a big room, not such a small room, but even bigger room, like a whole warehouse.
Yep.
Where they would actually physically store their servers, and they would have like all the networking, security, storage of data and stuff like that there to handle. You can think of it, Australia Post fulfills like millions of parcels a day. So what that would look like, they need like that infrastructure. So that's like sort of what we call on-prem. And then the other side is the cloud, which is, you can think of AWS, GCP, and Azure, which is Microsoft, which are the 3 big clouds. What's different is that they also would have some big fulfillment center or big warehouse where they store servers and stuff. But instead, what they do is they rent out part of that to companies that want to use it, which is basically the cloud.
Yep.
So part of that project was to move some of the on-prem stuff into Google Cloud.
Okay.
Moving the on-prem data into, so there's aspects of data migration, which is moving on-prem data to Google Cloud. And then once the data is in Google Cloud, data is in a format that you can't, and naturally, whenever you get the data in the format that it's extracted from the source systems, it's in a format that you can't really use it.
Yeah.
So, but for this project, they had the on-prem data that they were using. They already have some reports in a tool called Microsoft Access, which is a really old legacy tool that they use for reporting. But now what they wanted is strategy was like move to the cloud and then build stuff on the cloud. Yeah. Then obviously the reports that were built on Microsoft Access, that was years ago, the requirements, everything was different. So now we want to migrate and rebuild sort of parts of that in GCP. So that's why it was like migrating to Google Cloud, that was part of it. But then also when you get the data in, you have to transform it in a way. So there were parts of it was Python, but most of it I would say was just SQL and DBT and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think we had DBT at that time. It was just, we built actually a similar DBT framework. DBT again is a SQL manipulation or like transformation framework.
Yep.
But we build a custom framework in Python to take the data, transform it, and then when you transform it and it's running every day, you need or whenever you're making changes, you want to make sure that it's tested before it's released, and that's where like sort of CI/CD comes.
CI/CD, yeah.
Yeah, so that was part of the project. It was everything, and then eventually when the data is ready, then you start building reports.
Yeah. But I think that's a great project for someone.
Amazing.
Yeah, especially like if you're a data science and stuff, there's software engineering involved in that. There's a whole bunch, there's everything in there.
Everything. And there's design as well. So, because you can think of it as like there's two streams of work in parallel going on, which is like the data is getting ready. But then since data is not ready, what do these people who have responsibility of building dashboards, what do they do? So then this stream is assuming that the data will be in this format. So what they're working on is design with the stakeholders.
When you say design, you mean like what are they designing?
So when we think about Tableau or any data visualization, you have to go through a journey. So when I say go through a journey, is the first step is to understand what a requirement would be from a stakeholder. For example, you come and say, hey, I want to look at, let's say you're a sales manager in Coles, you want to look at how your department is performing for like the last 1 year. You want to see trends every month. You want to see which store is not hitting their target, which is not. So here I am collecting all the requirements.
Okay.
But then once I collected the requirements, how do I piece it together in a nice dashboard or visualization? So that's where design comes in, where we would generally, now this is what we do as well, is we used to do it there, just whiteboard it. We have the requirements to sort of like visually draw a whiteboard to say, these are the requirements, and map it to a nice like visualization, which is like a drawing. And then the next process was, and we still do it, is present it back to the stakeholders, say, hey, this is what we're going to build before actually building anything.
Oh, okay.
Because then we get a really early feedback. So instead of like spending months trying to build something and then show value, and this is again very important in technology, is that you want to show, and especially in startup, you want to show value straight away or as quickly as possible. So we used to draw it on a whiteboard, take that then to like, I don't know what tool we used to use. There was a tool that was nice just to draw out sort of visualizations without actually having any data. It was just like visual tool for data visualizations. Present that back to the stakeholders, say, hey, this is what you're going to get. What do you think? And then they would sort of have more follow-up questions, more feedback. You change that design. And then once the design is finalized, now we start building that design. And then as you sort of start building, going through that journey of building, then you also go back and get feedback. So getting constant feedback and releasing small iterations. And that's also goes into how software engineering projects are done, which is like in sprints, is like small sprints, but then each sprint sprint is like a 2-week block of time.
Yes.
Where you have defined, for people who know, like defined little blocks of work.
So we're talking about agile methodology.
Yeah. So following that principle, what that means is every 2 weeks, let's say the first 2 weeks, we're going to finish the design on a whiteboard. And then the next 2 weeks, we're going to take feedback from the stakeholders. And then the next 2 weeks, we're going to incorporate that feedback. And then after that, we're going to start building. So, yeah, but yeah, it was...
I think the product feedback loop is also important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, you know, you're presenting, I mean, it's not necessarily product here, but the design is going through to the stakeholders. They're getting back to you. You're iterating on that. You're going back. But just since we've brought up agile and sprints, a lot of the work that goes into the sprints often happens before the sprint even starts. Yeah, so, you know, I think anybody that's, especially software engineers, it's probably a nightmare for you, but hearing the name Jira, I'm sure that'll ring a few bells. So, you know, it's basically a list of tasks that you put together that you think the team will finish throughout the 2-week timeline. And was that common also within data teams? I'm guessing it'd be similar.
Yes. Yeah. So we use sprints as well. And before sprints, we plan. So how we do it now, for example, is, and we used to do in Linktree and Servian as well, is like you plan a quarter first. So these are high level, sort of, let's say 3 or 4 OKRs are objectives and key results that we want to achieve. So they would be like sort of bigger, more abstract, broad 2 or 3 key results that you want to achieve in a quarter. And that then gets broken down into really, really tiny details all the way to 2 weeks worth of work.
Okay.
So that 3 months, quarters, 4 months worth of work, 3 months, sorry, worth of work would then get broken down into 2 weeks, and then
And in terms of like determining OKRs and then breaking down work, that's the PM's role, right? Or who? Yeah, exactly.
It's like, my work. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I still do it. So like part of my role here is like, so we sit together with the head of to come up with OKRs. And
Head
part
of what?
Head of like data.
Okay.
And then he has direction obviously from the CEO or higher up to say, hey, this is broadly what we have to do. We'll come with OKRs, and then once I get the OK, then my responsibility is to break it down further.
So is that at your current job at Montu?
Yes.
Okay.
And at Linktree I did that as well.
And at Linktree.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. OKRs is an interesting one. Now you bring it up.
Yeah.
I remember once, I think the first job I had as a startup, we were discussing whether to use OKRs or not.
Yeah.
What do you think are the pros and cons of using OKRs?
I think it is, so looking back, this is my second startup. At the start in Linktree, we didn't really have OKRs. And the problem in startups is that if you don't have OKRs, or in general, if you don't have, your priorities are changing very quickly, very often, because business and things are, and oftentimes when you're a startup, it's always a race to who can be the market leader first in that particular niche. So at the start, it's a little bit challenging having OKRs, but it's good to have OKRs because it provides structure. And also it's good for everyone in the team as well, because instead of jumping from one thing to another, it provides a little bit of structure around what we are going to focus for the first 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can release that. So I think, OKRs in general is really good, because what it does, it provides structure to a very unstructured startup world.
Yeah. Does it help align the team as well, so that they got 2-3 main objectives?
Exactly. So they don't have to sort of constantly switch. So I remember at that time in Linktree, once I was like on 6 or 7 different things at the same time. So your mind just like, you're context switching all the time. It's very hard to focus. And what that means is you can't do proper good work as well. Because if you're focusing on maybe 1 or 2 things, you can do good work. But if you're focusing on like 10 things, it's like very hard to like...
Yeah, multiple hats.
Yeah, multiple hats. So I think, like, OKRs, I'm a big fan. Yeah.
Fair enough. I've got to find someone who isn't a big fan next time. And then see what their perspective is. All right, let's go back to, so we were talking about your first role project, as Servian, using Tableau, and then everything else that came along with it. Yeah. What happened from there?
Yeah, so that was the first big project. I think that I spent 5-6 months there, and then did really well. With stakeholders, all the feedback was really good. So every 6-ish months, I think at that time I just finished my probation. So I got hired as an analyst, and my probation in the first 6 months, alhamdulillah, I did well. So I got promoted to an associate consultant.
Nice.
And then after that, there was like 3 months later, there was another annual review. So then they promoted me again to a consultant, like a couple months, 3 months later.
So what was the difference in roles between those levels?
I think the responsibility changes. So you go from being responsible to build, but then also responsible for the project itself and the initiative.
Okay.
So one is like you're given something to do. So let's say you have to, like as small as a detail could be, you have to go and build out a dashboard when you're, for example, more junior level. Whereas like, let's say when you become a consultant now, you're designing what needs to be done.
Okay.
So it goes more like you get more responsibility.
More involvement with the stakeholders?
Exactly. Yeah. Stakeholders, design, direction. So that sort of changes as you go up. And then also within a consulting firm like Servian, there's also responsibility as you go higher up is like training other people.
Okay.
So like when more people are getting hired, so in Servian, how they did it was really nice is that you have to go and train other people as well who are under you. So then that way they create more people who can then do train others.
100%.
Which is really nice. Yeah, I think which other project? So across my time, I worked Australia Post. I did a project for ANZ, real estate, Blackmores. I talked about ANZ. There was one other company.
What was the nature of the projects? NAB, yeah.
NAB as well. Different, and then back to Australia Post. So there were different projects. So that was Australia Post. In real estate, I think the coolest project was the REA one because. So one thing in Europe or UK, there's a board or body called GDPR.
Yes.
Which is I don't not too much, but like what they do is compliance stuff related data. So what you can store, what information you can store about customers, stuff like that.
They're the reason you have to press reject cookies or accept cookies
exactly. Stuff
every
like that
time.
they look after. So in REA, they had a project where all their data was stored in so they were on GCP.
Okay.
All their data was stored in because in GCP and AWS and stuff, you can select regions where you want to store your data.
Yes.
So all this data was stored in the Europe region. And because all their data is Australian and there was like very strict GDPR requirement, they had to migrate from Europe into Australia.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And just within the cloud. But it's really interesting because the volume was like, I think we had to move around, 750 terabytes of data.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you have to move like small pieces of data, it's a very simple problem. But then, and there's also live data coming in. So obviously, because REA is a website, they have like so many users. There's also live data coming in. So that was a really cool project. We spent about 6 to 7 weeks moving that data all the way from Europe to Australia.
So you guys were able to move it all within 6-7 weeks?
7 weeks, yeah. And then, also making sure that like all the new live data is going into the Australian region rather than Europe region. So that was really interesting. Like all the moving, it was like shoveling all that huge amount of data into and it got really like interesting. Like we were on the news as well about that.
Okay. But what did it involve? Like I can't imagine what it would involve on your end, like to move clouds from Europe to Australia.
Yeah, it was very difficult, very interesting because when you have to move small amounts of data, let's say you can write a little Python script and you can move it.
Yeah.
But then when you have to move such huge volumes of data, where do you store it? Because like, let's say and this is getting a little bit into software as well. Yeah. So when you have a CSV file, it's small, 30 megs, you load pandas, it's like instant, it happens.
Yes.
As the file size grows bigger and bigger and bigger, at one point your computer caps out. And then you're like, oh, I need a bigger computer or I need to move into the cloud. Or what I need to do is I need to distribute the workload somehow. So then breaking that 1 terabyte into many small gigabytes and then moving that. So one thing, but the challenge is that there's live data as well. If you have to just port it, it's a little bit easier, but there's live data coming in as well. So I think if I have to like on a high level explain it is, one is first pointing what is writing live in Europe to Australia to make sure that we are not moving any of the live data, that we're not keeping any of the live data in Europe. So that way it doesn't disrupt the business, what's happening, business as usual. So it doesn't cause what we call in IT like downtime.
Yes. Without
causing any downtime. And then taking all that data, distributing it in multiple smaller chunks, and then moving that. Because then instead of you trying to move, for example, a table that's like 3, 4, 5 terabytes, if you have to move data in tables that are smaller, gigabytes, it's a lot easier because then you can have compute to do that. So really the answer is like using distributed computing or parallel compute to like break it down into smaller chunks and then moving that to like a different region.
Okay. And I'm just thinking, because why couldn't GCP, for example, do that on their end? Because like they own the data and they're moving it to another one of their own servers.
Yeah. I think at that time, so now there's ways to do that, but then one was because of the volume, because I don't think anyone before had done such big volumes of data moving it one region to another. And with GCP, there's some at that time, like you couldn't really just click of a button and say move it from one place to another. You had to move it from, for example, in GCP there's a data warehouse called BigQuery where you store data. You have to go up from BigQuery to a bucket in the same region, from bucket to another region, and then from the bucket to
okay.
I think now there's a way to do it directly, but then also at that time you had to do it through this way. And the other challenge was as well, because of the sheer volume of the data, it wouldn't like scale, just like the internal services that they had. Like BigQuery has a BigQuery data transfer service.
Yes.
So it wouldn't really scale just to move it so easily. So we had to sort of write our own thing to like move that data. So it was quite interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was like REA. In Australia Post, I also then went back to do an OCR project, which is optical character recognition. That was the ML project that I did, which was, so they have a lot of consignment notes.
Uh-huh.
And then, I don't know, it was just a POC, but like trying to convert that characters into text so that then they can be stored easily. Because now, like, you can think of a lot of handwritten notes. How do you store that data?
Oh.
So converting handwritten into text and then storing that, and then that can be later used for whatever purposes.
Yep.
So that was really interesting. Like, and
That would have been difficult.
not really, because I think GCP, AWS, and stuff make it really easy now. Because instead of you collecting all the data, building a machine learning model, you use AutoML now. So AutoML is that you just give it the stuff, and Google has its own APIs to recognize characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, it's quite accurate. We found that like if you have to spend time and build a whole machine learning model and stuff like that, it would take like months. But you're just using an API, although it might not be as accurate eventually, maybe. But then like the difference in value is like one would be, let's say, 80% accurate, the other one would be 90%. So the difference of 10%, but the value and how quickly you can do it so quickly with these APIs.
The transfer.
Yeah.
The time.
Yeah, so it was interesting. Other like banks and stuff, I did like a lot of migration projects, setting up their data warehouse, data lake, G stuff. I worked for this health company as well, where that was another interesting project because they wanted to label their data. So now you can pass in a lot of this text to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT can do, because in machine learning, it's a lot easier when you have label data.
Yes.
So given inputs, you can say what the output is, but when you have no labels, then it's so hard to do predictions. I haven't been out of the ML space for long. I don't know how it's changed now, but like now you can, I know like you can give it to ChatGPT and then it'll
label
tell it to classify it and label it. But we had to use like sophisticated models like Snorkel to try to input this data, and then for it to use just heuristics or estimates to like come up with a accurate label.
What's Snorkel?
Snorkel is a machine learning model that uses that you can input the data and it would help you sort of define groups or classify that data for you.
So its whole job is classification.
Yeah. So given, let's say if you have a information about someone, which is like, what do they like to eat? What do they like to, I don't know, like what is their age and like where do they live, all that. And then you want to bucket it accurately into one like label to say, okay, this person belongs to this like segment. You can use unsupervised learning for it, but if you have supervised learning, which you actually know what the label is, then you can predict and do things nicely. So the whole job of Snorkel is it takes in that input and then sort of finds out, gives you what group or stuff they can belong to. And then when you give it more inputs of someone else, then it can tell you, okay, it belongs to this group. So it's nice to like, group people together.
So it's like a, it's almost like a pre-processing step before. Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So that's like ML component. I did some ML projects here and there. Then we built like a whole data lake in it. And there was a chatbot project as well I did.
Nice.
For another like bank. Using like in Google there's Dialogflow.
Yeah.
It's a chatbot tool they have. So using that to build a chatbot for them.
So Dialogflow allows you to build chatbots.
Yes. Yeah. So there's another tool called ManyChat.
Okay.
That's also a tool to build chatbots. But Dialogflow is like Google's offering, which is pretty powerful. It has its own ML and things like that. You have abilities. Again, you're not building models. You're like training an already trained model of your data. Sort of like ChatGPT, where it's already a trained model. You give it some inputs and say, okay, based on my scenario, this is like inputs, and then it gives you output. So it's similar kind of like that.
Just you mentioned data lakes a couple of times. I remember like help us distinguish between a data lake and a data warehouse.
Yeah, and then there's Delta Lake as well.
Yeah,
And a lake house as well.
Yeah.
So let's start with data lake. So let's start with data warehouse. Actually, it's simplest to understand. Data warehouse, and before data warehouse as well, there are databases. So let's take an example of Coles. Coles is the big, supermarket, and every time you go check out, there's a terminal that you go and you put in all your items and you pay for it. Behind that checkout terminal, there's a database that's storing these transactions. Let's say you came in, you paid for something, so it's inserting a record, or when you went there, you deleted something, it updates, so it's capturing transactions.
Yep.
So all these transactions and these events are being captured inside a database. From that database, what you're really interested in is just a transaction, so it needs to be quick. You don't really use it for analytical purposes to make decisions.
Okay.
But then let's say at the end of the day, all these databases across the country, they collect their data and put it in something called a data warehouse, which is a collection of all these data from these databases, and it's keeping history so that you can make decisions. So for example, if I collect all this information from databases across a month, I can say what stores are performing well, what stores are not, what products are doing well, what products are not doing so well, what do I need to order more, what I don't need to order more, what is the customer shopping behavior like. So I collect all this information into like a central sort of data warehouse, and then that's like your data warehouse. But the key in both databases and data warehouses, well, they're different modern databases now, but the data is structured. What that means is it's in a form of columns and rows. So it's like table-like, for example, in database and data warehouse. Whereas like what's different in a data lake is that data can be, because now data is not just structured, it's unstructured as well. You've got images, you've got just like unstructured text. So it's not just about like tables. So what a data lake is, it can store information which is unstructured as well. So then maybe if you have use cases for ML where you want to do some recognition of the images, you want to do, all that kind of stuff, you can use data lake as a store and use that.
So what if you've got images within a table?
How would you store images within the table?
Some databases can they not?
You can store it in a
Binary format. Yeah.
But then that's also processing part. Initially, how do you land? So when you get a raw image like a JPEG, there needs to be some processing that needs to be done in order to convert it into binary format to then store it in the data warehouse. But it needs to land somewhere. So that's where data lake comes into place.
Yep.
From there, you can process it to like convert it into binary format that you can then store it into a data warehouse. But then like initially, like you can't, like you don't get it in a binary format. Does that make sense? Let's say someone's uploading images, Canva is an example. For example, you're uploading images, you're downloading, doing that stuff. So all those get stored into like a data lake, and then eventually processed, and then you can move into a data warehouse as well. So that's like sort of distinction of data lake and data warehouse. And lakes can also be used as a data warehouse. Yeah. So this is the concept of like lakehouse, which basically, so there's different data formats. There's like CSV, which everyone commonly knows, but there's JSON, there's Avro, there's Parquet. So there's multiple data formats. So if you have all your data in data lake, common tools for data lake normally use either if you're on GCP, you can use cloud storage, or if you're on AWS, use S3.
Yep.
And you have a catalog attached to it. Basically, you have a data warehouse.
Yeah.
Because you have the data and a catalog, which is basically a schema to classify that data of what it belongs to. So now you can really take that anywhere and attach any compute to it, and you have a data warehouse. Which, for example, in AWS, you would have heard of Redshift, which is like their data warehouse.
Yes.
But you can very easily use S3, Glue to register the catalog, and Athena to just build a data warehouse yourself.
So that was S3. What was the other one?
So you use schema, so that would be AWS Glue. So they have their own
Glue.
Schema. Yes, Glue schema catalog, which schemas, and then Athena, which is like the tool where you can use to write queries.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Nice. And then you mentioned Delta
Lakehouse.
Yeah. Oh, Lakehouse. That's Lakehouses.
So Lakehouse is a combination of. So traditionally, the problem is that like data lake now becomes a data dump rather than a data.
Yeah.
So the idea of data warehouse is the data needs to be useful for analytics and decision making and machine learning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then what's happening is past few years is that you keep on dumping data into S3, so it becomes a data dump rather than anything that's useful. So what a lake house is a combination of lake and data warehouse, but then data is, I guess, like more useful. It's auditable, it's got logs on it, it's got like quality attached to it. So it's like, your lake house.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I think a year or two ago I saw like this data quality startup got like a ridiculous pre-seed round. It was like 16 million or something, because it sounds like it's a really big issue.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Because then you don't have quality, and then you have to, it's a nightmare to manage.
Yeah. All right. So that's your time at Servian.
That's my time at Servian.
Yeah. So what happened after that?
Yeah, so during, I guess like in the middle, Servian, COVID hit as well. When I was 7, there was COVID, it started. So all the lockdowns and stuff happened. So that's when like started working from home. At that time is when I started like my e-commerce business as well.
Oh, nice.
Maybe touching a little bit on that. So like I sell products on Amazon FBA in the US.
Amazon.
On Amazon in US.
Okay.
A program called Amazon FBA, which is called Fulfillment by Amazon.
Okay.
What that basically is that you say I want to sell like a water bottle. But what I do is I find out ways of making the product that's already selling better. So water bottle is a bad example, but could be anything. Let's say these mics.
Yeah.
There's something good about these mics, but then how can I make it better? Maybe a different design or different quality, or looking at reviews or understanding.
Okay.
So make a product better and then manufacture that product overseas and then ship it to Amazon.
Okay.
So what Amazon then does, they have a program called FBA, which is Fulfillment by Amazon. So they pick, pack, ship, handle all the customer service, everything. So your job is to look at the data, and then, because Amazon is a search engine, essentially. It's a product catalog and search engine. So you look at the search to look at the keywords. And again, this is like the data background that comes in as well. A little bit where like you look at these keywords, you can identify gaps in the market. So let's say the way to search this mic could be podcast mic, mics for podcast, black mics. So you can see on the keywords that maybe there are like 4 or 5 people that are selling really well on a keyword.
Okay.
But there's certain keywords that they're not selling really well on. So those can be the keywords that you can like try to sell on. And the thing in Amazon is as you rank high in the search, then you start making good sales and profit and stuff like that.
So it's a different form of AdWords, Google AdWords.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
You find keywords, find gaps in the keywords, find a product, find the gap in the product where you can make it actually better, not copy exactly. Because if you're going online, say to Amazon to buy something, there's mics that are two of the same. One has like 20 reviews, the other one has 1,000 reviews. Which one are you more likely to buy? And if they're similar prices, but let's say this guy with 20 was selling like $2 or $4 or $5 cheaper. How much cheaper can you get? You would still like, as a consumer, buy something that has higher reviews. Maybe there'll be one off that would buy
better reviews. Yeah.
So you do that, and then you go manufacture the product, have your brand on it, send it to the US, and then start selling.
Okay. So that's pretty much the dropshipping model, right?
Dropshipping is different. Dropshipping is you don't manufacture your product, you don't store anything, you don't buy inventory. Dropshipping is that you got an order, you fulfilled it, bought it from Alibaba, AliExpress, eBay, whatever, and then you shipped it to a customer. You didn't do actively anything to improve the product. You don't own the brand as well. You don't store any stock or inventory. Here, it's like we are manufacturing the products, we're buying it up front, and then ship it to the US. We store it in the US and then ship it from there. Whereas dropshipping, let's say someone gets an order in the US, you fulfill that directly from the country. You're not like buying stock in bulk.
Okay.
You don't have any.
So you're pretty much renting space within an Amazon fulfillment center.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And then they also look after the fulfillment. So whenever you get orders, they fulfill it for you. They handle returns, customer service, everything.
Okay, nice. And like, what kind of things have you been selling?
I got like 3. So I actually started in the UK, and I just exited my brand about a year ago. So that's one thing about Amazon as well, is that, or like e-commerce in general, that as you build a brand, you can then sell it. Just like buying a house, you build it and then sell it. It's the same thing in e-commerce as well. You build a brand, create like good brand recognition, sales, reviews and stuff like that, and then you eventually sell it. So my first one is actually in the UK. So I started that. We built a brand. It was like in a kitchen niche. So there was a lot of kitchen accessory products.
Okay.
So we built that, sold it, and then now I have like 3 brands in the US.
What got you into kitchen stuff?
Just data. Like you look at the gap because
okay.
Yeah, because I said like you need to look at 2 things mainly. Not really, if like the thing about selling anything online, not just Amazon specific, e-commerce specific. If you go by, I would like to sell this, it doesn't really work well. Rather than if there is data backing up to say that what you want to sell, or just in general saying that you can sell it, plus you can also actually add value to it, rather than just copy pasting everything that's going on, then you would like eventually do really well. So it's just like the data made sense for it, and I was like, yeah, we'll just do it, and then it alhamdulillah worked out really well.
Nice.
And COVID was really nice for e-commerce because everything was booming, so I think that was a factor as well for it to do really well.
There was a tailwind. just you went with.
Yes, it was just lucky. Like I guess like it just happened to be the right place at the right time. It's about like I guess like one other thing is like you need to be in it as well.
Yeah.
For anything. So if you're in it, eventually sometimes you're, sort of in the right place. So yeah, alhamdulillah, like that. And then now we have like 3 brands in the US. One is in the pet niche. The other one is again in the kitchen accessories. And there's a third one that I'm working on actively at the moment that probably would be in the furniture niche.
Okay. And is it just you now, or do you have other people helping you out? Yeah, okay.
And I have people working for me as well, and I have partners as well. Yeah.
Yep.
So we hire people from overseas, mostly from Pakistan. We hire people, what we call like virtual assistants, and then they like sort of help out with a lot of the stuff running in the business.
Nice. So they take off like a lot of the admin work and whatever to make your life easier.
Yeah. So Amazon already, I would say, takes a lot of admin work, but then there's still admin work around talking to suppliers, marketing, stuff like that. So like a lot of it is like handled by
So you're involved in the manufacturing process too.
Actively, I am. Yes, so we
as a company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we go and find suppliers in China, and then so mainly we just manufacture in China. So we go actively find suppliers, negotiation, stuff like that, and then we also work with freight companies as well. Because once the manufacturer, we have to ship that as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So we work with both like manufacturers and freight companies.
Was that annoying during COVID? Because I think freight was not.
No, it wasn't. I think it was just hard, and I'm glad that it was hard because, again, it was easy. A lot of people would do it. And because it was hard, not many people did it. And they had that question, as you have, like, was it annoying? Was it hard? It was, of course, but, like, alhamdulillah, it was good. And it was very expensive. So,
yeah, I was going to say.
One container at that time, we were shipping around maybe like 15,000 US. Like, that was one container at that time to the US. That was really expensive. But now it's like 2, 3, 4. So it's come down drastically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but during COVID peak, like it was that much. So it was like very hard getting suppliers.
Was it worthwhile?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it was really good, yeah.
Alhamdulillah, that's good. Yeah. And do you plan on expanding continuously?
I do, yes.
To expand that, yep.
Yeah. The challenge with e-commerce is that and I was reading the other day, like, for example, Nike, the first 3 years, they didn't actually have any money in the bank because all their money was constantly going in inventory.
Yeah, of course.
The challenge with an e-commerce business is that as you're growing and scaling, all your cash flow is generally stuck in like stock and inventory because you're constantly ordering, constantly sending products. So it needs at least like 2 to 3 or 4 years of maturity for it to be in a place where like it can become really big.
Okay. And I think interesting for me is like, how are you finding these customers?
Just on Amazon, because Amazon is a search engine, right? So Amazon already.
Oh, so you're listing them on Amazon.
On Amazon, yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, we list them on TikTok Shop as well now. So this TikTok has a shop. We list them on like other ways, but the main, I would say, 90% of the sales come from Amazon.
Okay. And are you worried about that?
Not really. Why would I be worried?
I don't know. I'm just thinking, do you want to like diversify your channels?
We do diversify, but then there's so much traffic on Amazon. We do sell like other channels as well, but the thing is that most of the sales come from Amazon, especially the US is so big.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, like we have our own website, we sell on that as well. We have like sort of eBay, we have like TikTok Shop, we sell multiple places. We have Walmart as well. We sell in the US on Walmart as well. But like just Amazon traffic is like huge. So most of the sales just come from there. So we want to, I guess, like increase it, but there's not much traffic anywhere else. Then especially in the US, you would just find it on. And I guess it's like now, at the start it's a little bit expensive, but it's like cheapest traffic source as well. Okay. Because once you've ranked on Amazon, well, then you don't need to spend money on ads or anything to rank your product. So it's basically free traffic coming in, and it's like
nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, it is risky. Like today, if Amazon closes our account, then we lose 90% of like the revenue.
Your revenue, yeah.
But yeah, it's an avenue. It's the biggest avenue we have.
You have, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got very lucky at that time as well because it was perfect time to join Linktree because again, lockdown happened, everyone went online. Linktree got like a lot of money, and then
they exploded at the time.
I remember at that time. And e-commerce, like I was talking about as well, like just luckily I was at COVID. And I would say like even before the podcast, I was chatting about buying a house and stuff like even that, like I did that before sort of COVID.
Yeah.
Again, like I don't know, just alhamdulillah, Allah was
things fell into place. Alhamdulillah.
Just a lot of times it's just luck. Like I guess like is you can plan and say I would do this at this time, that time, but then sometimes it's just lucky.
Yeah, you just follow. Yeah.
So yeah, Linktree was really interesting. I joined at that time as a data engineer. So that time like a data platform was not really, I would say, a thing.
Not for Linktree or in general?
In general,
Yeah.
the industry. Now it's like, a term that's like, like cool and like people are like, oh yeah, data platform engineer. But that time it was like data engineer. And I was like, cool. I joined as a data engineer. They're very, very different tech
Okay.
there because it's a startup. So, and all my experience was like for corporates. So a lot of corporates have a lot of legacy systems. They move very slowly. So I was surprised. Like, for example, my experience in banks was like we would release once in like 3 months, which is when I say release, like something goes into production. There's a lot of planning that goes 3 months, and maybe rightfully so as well because they have a lot of compliance and stuff like that. And they have to, and they can, I guess, like do that as well. Whereas like at Linktree, when I went there, I was like, oh, we push the production like every day or maybe 2 or 3 times a day. I was like, that's pretty cool. Yeah. And the systems were built. The engineering was so good that the system was built that way to do that as well. Like it's not that like because we used to release so many times a day, it's not robust. It was still like quite robust and stuff like that.
What did you learn about like running engineering teams from that process? Because that wouldn't be easy. Deploying multiple times a day.
They were amazing. Like at Linktree, they were amazing when I came in. Amazing engineers, amazing engineering leaders. Really, like I learned so much there in how to do good engineering.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. So coming in, there was like, and especially I learned a lot from. So we had an SRE team, DevOps team at Linktree. So I learned a lot from that DevOps team because a lot of the good engineering principles about release and sort of monitoring systems and stuff like that comes from those principles. So I learned like I'd say a lot from that team.
What kind of principles we're talking?
Like so if you think about a system, let's say a platform, how do you make sure that every time you're releasing something into the platform, it is well tested, robust, at the same time you know that even if there's a failure, you can roll back quickly. When you're releasing something, how do you make sure that you are monitoring and alerting everything? So you are not told by your customers that something is wrong. You already know that you're proactively capturing those issues and changes.
And is that in like the release cycle? We're talking the era, or is that bugs on the, let's say?
It would be after. So you did what you could. So of course, like, no system can be 100%.
No, of course not.
So when you did the best to like release it and it works, but then maybe when the system is running, there's an issue. But how can you make sure that you're actively monitoring and alerting that system? Just so if there are failures, you can proactively catch them rather than, you getting notified by customers or like whatever, like to know that there's bugs or issues. So what I learned from that is how can you do both things if you do both things really good, then what that means is that the system that you're building will be really robust and resilient.
Yes.
One other important thing that I learned from there, which comes into data platform as well, or platform engineering in general, is that how can you build tooling that can help engineering move very fast or faster. So for example, just going a little bit like, let's say if you want to build a new feature, like you're writing like a little microservice or like a backend service. Traditionally, if you look at, from my experience before Linktree, was that you would have a dedicated DevOps team in a corporate, in a bigger company, and then you have engineers who are building the feature. Once they build the feature, they would palm it off to the DevOps team, and then the DevOps team would like sort of release it.
So completely separate.
Yeah, separate. Whereas like what I learned at Linktree is that the tooling that the platform engineers built, it really helped engineers to build, release, and own their stuff.
Okay.
So made it really simple and fast for them to not only build tool like features, but also at the same time to monitor them, to take full responsibility of them, and also to move really fast so they can quickly like really start rollback and stuff like that.
Yep.
So these are the, like, I would say 3 main takeaways from Linktree engineering that I learned. And the team enabled other engineers to do that as well, which is really interesting.
Okay.
Which is like kind of what now my role is as well in the data platform.
Okay.
Making sure we can do that.
So what kind of tooling did you build for engineers? Because I'm a software engineer now.
Yeah.
So it's like when you talk to me about engineering culture, engineering management, it's all very relevant.
Yeah.
I think we probably have a lot of software people listening to.
Yeah. So let's take an example, something that we are looking at or doing for engineering. So in data platform sits in the middle. This is like maybe like my Linktree experience as well, and also what I do at Montu. is data platform sits in the middle of data consumers and producers. So you have
Okay.
producers, which is software engineers, and then there are consumers, which can be data scientists, data analysts, analytics engineers, and stuff like that, who are actively building stuff in the warehouse for reporting, machine learning, stuff like that. So a data platform comes in as middle. So how it can help with engineering, for example, you have a company where you have many microservices, but these microservices are talking to each other through calling each other's APIs, request and response. There's a service that's built by another team, and you want their data, so you have to tap into their databases. So what happens is now you have really strong coupling between services, and one change there could break your change. So how do we decouple that? So let's say one of the things that Data Platform does is build, for example, an event stream. So we can build like a Kafka or an event bridge for you, where teams can, and also tooling around how easily, maybe a Node.js library or something, where you can easily publish your messages to that event bus.
Yes.
And then also tooling where if you want to use, let's say AWS, so you can easily spin up like a Lambda or an ECS where you can consume that message and build your microservice as well.
Okay.
So then that tooling can really enable you to decouple your service, which is like the event stream. But then at the same time, the production and the consumption of data, there's libraries and toolings that's built in where it can spin up infrastructure yourself, and it makes it really easy for you to consume messages from there and then build your services up.
Okay.
So that's an example of like what a data platform would do for like producers, for instance.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm guessing for like on the other side, the consumers is just like taking that data and then building models or whatever it is.
Consumers can be both ways, right? So there are multiple consumers that can come out of a data platform. So you can think of as engineering is one of the consumers. So maybe if we take an example of e-commerce, as soon as an order is processed, I want to send an email. So order is created is one microservice, email is sent is another microservice.
Yep.
So as soon as that message is published to the bus where it says order is processed, you want to do something else, which is like send an email. So your team, for example, could be one of the consumers of that event, which said that order is created, and then you sort of send an email. So that's like sort of engineering. But then at the same time, you also have data, which is like you want to send all that data into a data lake or lake house for your analytics and that purposes. But at the same time, also you have third-party tools as well. Like for example, Braze is a marketing tool where as soon as someone has abandoned their cart, you want to send them a pop-up message. So that is another consumer where you can maybe send data directly to Braze, for instance, from that event stream, and then they can do stuff. So what that central bus or an event stream enables is that for the ability to send and consume really easily. And then the tooling that's built around it as well will make sure that data can be easily produced and consumed, but also can be robust as well. So for example, if you look at Kafka and you attach a schema registry to it and you enable schema validation on that, the event that you're producing, for example, let's say an event that you're producing is auto created, you have a defined schema for it. And if you're sending that event, which is, for example, in your schema, you have product ID, but then you changed it in your code to be product IDs. No, it doesn't comply with what you mentioned. So you would be able to publish, rejected. So all that tooling that's built around that can help with, and then it helps with production and consumption. It increases reliability of the data at the same time. It's sort of.
But why wouldn't that happen at the API level though?
That would, right?
Yeah.
So when you try to publish it to Kafka, it would like reject, for example, that like validation step, it would reject it. So it would be at a client side.
Yeah, fair enough. Because
before it even gets to the stream, for example, it would happen at,
because that's like that. We're in the middle of doing something similar. So that's where things like TypeScript are handy. The DTOs and so on. Okay.
So that's what sort of like what a data platform would do.
Yeah, interesting. And so as a data platform lead, I can imagine there's quite a few stakeholders involved.
There's pretty much everyone.
Everyone needs data.
Everyone needs data. Everyone needs the tooling. So like our team here and as well as Linktree, like pretty much you would say that I don't think anyone is in the company that's not our stakeholder. So engineering is data is marketing and everyone would be, because like everyone needs to produce and consume data, and we're sort of in the middle trying to orchestrate everything, have tooling, make it easier for people to like do that. So it's it can be challenging as well, because at the same time, there's like newer things as well. Experimentation is one of them. So I don't know if you've heard of like this tool called Statistic or Launch Darkly. So,
Yeah. Explain.
so let's say if you have a website, you have, let's say car sales. Let's take an example. You go to carsales.com, there's a button that's blue. What would happen if I change this button to red?
Okay.
Would I get more conversion? Would people buy more? Would they not buy more? And it would be not so wise to release it to everyone straight away. So I would maybe want to release it to only 3% of people in New Zealand.
Okay.
I don't know if process in New Zealand, but just as an example,
Yeah.
like 3% of the people in New Zealand to first test it to actually, does it work? Or would it reduce my conversion? So I want to do experiments.
Okay.
So again, data platform is responsible for that because you're using these tools called Launch Darkly or Statistic to do that. But at the same time, once that experiment has happened, you want to send that event back, collect it, and then at the same time send it to these tools, Statistic and whatever, which can do the statistical calculation, but also internally to check and make sure that, hey, has it really like done what it's supposed to do?
Yeah.
What was the result and outcome? So there's a lot of tooling that's built to send it to these places and orchestrate the flow of data.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where like, a data platform comes in as well.
Okay. Well, since you brought up experimentation, I think like for a little while, A/B testing was a bit of a buzzword.
Yeah.
And can you just talk to, I'm gonna say the size or the scale of a company required to start really getting the most out of experimentation?
Yeah. That's a really interesting question. I think smaller companies, you don't realize, but you're doing experiments all the time,
Okay.
even if it's a small company. So you would, if I talk about like my example of e-commerce, I'm always doing experiments. I'm changing the title.
Yep.
I'm changing some images. So if you really think holistically about experiments, any company is always doing experiments.
Yep.
When do you need actually the capability of the platform to actually use tooling to like orchestrate all that or data? I would say like when you are at a substantial scale, which is like you're not too big but not too small, even for startups, I think it's worthwhile having tooling to do experiments because you are marketing, for example, is always going to do experiments.
Yes.
And they're going to do experiments based on, I think this would happen, or I think we should do this, rather than guesswork. If even we don't need to do something so fancy as like having Statistic and Launch Darkly, for example, that you can always do something as simple as Google Analytics, and you can run some experiments on there as well. But having some sort of way of collecting those experiments and then having a loop or feedback to understand what happened and then how can we do these experiments better is probably better to do it earlier rather than later.
Okay.
Because then a lot of the experiments that you're running, you don't know if they're performing well, what's happening with it, there's no real observation on it, everything's guesswork.
Yeah.
So it removes using data and collection of that information, like sort of removes the guesswork. And you can start small, right? You can always take an MVP approach where I was saying you can just use Google Analytics for that. And then as you see that you're getting better and better, then you can add more tooling and sophistication to it.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So spoke about tooling, the different stakeholders involved in being a data platform lead. Talk us through your journey at Linktree, because I know like you started off as a data engineer, but you didn't stay there the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started as a data engineer. So the role of, let's say, a data engineer is very different to a platform, and there's a mindset difference.
Yeah.
So the mindset difference is that I would say like as well now, data engineer would eventually be an analytics engineer in the future. But the idea of a data engineer is that you're more feature driven, which means that given something, you have to do it. Let's say, for example, hey, can you ingest the data from XYZ sources? So you're actively going and building stuff. Whereas data platform, you're enabling people to do that. Or enabling yourself as well to do that to make it easy rather than you going and have to do that all the time.
Okay.
So I started off as a data engineer where I had actively a lot of that stuff where like, I had to build like visualizations, I had to do analytics engineering, but also pull in data from different sources.
Yep.
We also have an aspect of give data back to the users as well.
Yep.
Which is like they have their own, like you can look at the Linktree, look at your data. Analytics as well. So there's that aspect as well of how can you orchestrate that back as well. So a lot of it was at the start, like how can we, build these, like just have a project where, okay, like maybe for our customers, we need to build these like sort of visualizations, or not visualizations, sorry, this like table or
Yep.
this like, and then use Snowflake to like write or model that data, create it in a way, because the data at Linktree was growing exponentially. We were receiving, like at the sort of where I left, we were receiving around 5 to 10,000 events per second.
Oh wow.
So you have to sort of create your models, because if you don't, then your Snowflake costs will go or your data warehouse costs will go really high, because then you have to really think about query. So it started with that, and then it slowly transformed into more like data platform, where like we have analysts who are and analytics engineers who are building these base models, what we call, or these tables in Snowflake and data warehouse. But then there's a lot of issues here, because as you grow really fast at a startup, we're just dumping all the data's dirty, there's no quality, there's all that, so that adding, and that's the shift at Linktree from going from that into a data platform, where now we build more robustness, which is like validation and all that stuff that I was talking about. So yeah, it started as that and then ended up at data platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you just talk to that difference between a data engineer and analytics engineer? Because even like when I first graduated, I was applying for data engineering roles, and a couple of times I got told you probably should be applying for the analytics engineer roles.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that distinction?
I don't think it is an industry, especially in jobs, they really differentiate with analytics engineer and data engineer. But like some companies do, some companies don't. So traditionally what a data engineer is responsible for, which is what an analytics engineer does now, is the data is in your data warehouse. So there's a team that's responsible, that's put the data into the data warehouse, and now you have to build models out of that. So models could be, let's say, take an example, e-commerce, receiving information about customers from various different dimensions, and you have to build a common customer model to say what's the customer details, when was their first purchase, when did they last log in, stuff like that.
So when you say model, is that like a schema?
Model in data engineering terms is like a kind of like a schema, and a table that would contain all that information about a customer.
Okay.
So like a one view or dimension about a customer.
So pretty much the data you want.
Yes.
About
that. Yeah. But modeling is very important, because, for example, that one information about a customer, different slices of that information could be required for multiple different people.
Yeah. Okay.
Multiple different reports. And if there's no base model that sort of shows one dimension of that customer, what that then means is that every single report that's built, they would have their own source of truth for how that information for a customer. So if you have one source of truth for like the customer, sort of that base model or table, let's say, then you can plug different like dimensions out of that, or slice and dice that you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So analytics engineering is that, which is you have the data in your data warehouse. How can you model your data for consumption in a way that it provides a single source of truth? That is analytics engineering. And part of it could also be there's certain tools that you find really easily to get data in. Like, for example, Fivetran is a data integration tool that you just click up, sit, and then it can get data into your data warehouse. So part of it could be that, but mostly they're responsible for modeling your data in your data warehouse and creating those base tables and base views as well, so that they can be ready for consumption. And that's a very important like aspect. So analytics engineer is about, now I think, and it could evolve again, but now it's more about building those models and data modeling so that it can be used for consumption for various teams. And it could be also, you think of analytics engineers are responsible for data as a product. So if you think of it as data is a product for the company where anyone can use it. For other departments. So what they're building is they're building data products, and they can then be used, and they have to obviously make sure, depending on if your company is growing really fast, there's a lot of volume, like for example at Linktree, then you have to make sure that the way that you're querying and also the way it will be accessed is in an efficient way, so that you're not going through like tons of like compute, so then you rack up a huge bill when it comes to, so that's what like analytics engineering is about. If in summary, like it's like releasing or building data as a product for consumption in the company. And to a certain extent, data engineering, traditional, and what you would see, like a lot of them is also doing that as well, which is modeling the data. And parts of it is also using or doing ETL, which is extracting data from various sources, transforming it, and then loading it.
Yep.
Or loading and transforming it, depending on ELT or ETL.
Yep.
So some of the jobs you would see is like data engineers would be responsible for extraction, transforming, and load, which is like not only they would be part of the modeling, but also extracting and loading data into this. So maybe they would be responsible for, so maybe they would be working on tools like Airflow, for example, to extract data, or Fivetran or stuff like that. So that would be like, they have to do some parts of analytics engineering and also loading the data in. So that would be like a data engineer.
Okay.
So this is like current and I would say some analytics engineers do that as well.
Yeah.
There's a very fine sort of intersection between data engineers and analytics engineers.
I think we once spoke about this, like distinguishing between the different roles within like the data space or data careers. So maybe let's touch on it briefly.
Yeah.
What do you see? Do you have like a broad breakdown of, say, data roles, and then from there, like, can you go into some of the more detailed specializations within that?
Sure. We can start from the right hand side, which is consumption, which is actual consumption of data. So let's start with that. So we have data analyst. So we talk about data analyst. The easiest way to describe it is data analyst is someone who knows how to tell really good stories with data.
Okay.
So you have data, as an analyst, you have data available to you, which is like clean, nice, prepared by another engineer. And we'll talk about that when we move sort of more towards the left-hand side.
Yep.
And then once it's ready, how can you use this data to tell really nice stories? And these nice stories can be in form of visuals, or it can just be like, how can you extract more insights from the data?
So like a report.
Yeah, like a report, could be a dashboard, could be just insights, could be active insights as well that you can get out of a report. So that's basically like what the responsibility of data analyst is, which is a really, like, a lot of people undermine the job of data analyst, but I feel like it's really, really like an important and a very difficult job to do as well. Like I touched upon like at the start about Australia Post and how we did it, like coming up with telling like really nice stories with data is a very difficult job. Anyone can put a bar chart up and stuff like that, but putting out something that's meaningful and useful is very challenging with data, because with software it's very black and white, or data platform or something that's very black and white, input, output.
Yep.
Whereas like analytics, the way that I view stuff is very different to how you would view stuff, to how would someone else would do it. So how can you commonly tell a story that can tell one picture or one direction rather than like basically one source of truth? So that's
but it's also about, like, remember when you said the first project you did with Survey, you had to address it at different levels? That's something the data analyst would have to take into account.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's like sort of more on the right hand side, data analyst. Then when you move a little bit to the left, in the middle, that's analytics engineers. And analytics engineers are responsible for the data we have the data, but the data is obviously coming from all different sources. It's dirty, there's no history, there's no modeling, there's no schemas defined that I can use or give it. So what the analytics engineers are responsible for is using tools to build that common data product.
Okay.
And then your product analyst or data analyst become the consumers for that data products.
Okay.
And I would say like part of the analytics, so there's another thing as well, is I'm not sure if you've heard of it, is like CDP, composable CDP, which is, or data activation. There's many terms that I use, which is like some tools might need data back as well. So if you think of tools like Zendesk, Braze, there's Mixpanel, there's what's the other front analytics tool? Can't remember the name of it, but these tools also need data back, which is you're collecting all this information, but they need to do like some analytics and stuff like that for marketing, for example, in Braze or in like Zendesk and stuff like that. So now the data is in the warehouse, you need to send this data back to them as well. So which is called data activation, reverse ETL. There's many terms used for it.
Okay.
So an analytics engineer would also respond for modeling the data not just for the data product or consumption for the analyst, but also sending it back.
Okay. Making sure you don't send back, company secrets or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also like for example, a tool like Braze, which is the marketing tool, in a data warehouse, when they're modeling a data for a customer, they're storing this information about a customer, but they have a history as well. So how you bought something, trends and stuff like that. But then the marketing tool might just need a source of truth, which is current. So they model the data in a way. So they're responsible for that. Then if you move more left, then that's where you have data platform. Data platform is responsible for making sure that the data is in. So one is like far left, which is supporting the engineers, which is we talked about like schemas, events and stuff like that, like tooling around that. But then also making sure that the data can be ingested and is available for consumption for analytics engineers.
Okay.
But it's not just that, like also it's about building tooling for analytics engineers to release stuff as well. So analytics engineers are responsible for modeling, but then what about like we talked about CI/CD and stuff like that? Scheduling is there, data cataloging is there. How do you have tooling for that? So the data platform is also responsible for building all this tooling that supports, I guess, like analytics engineering.
Yeah.
Then I would say we have data architects, but then I see now a lot of platform engineers doing architecture work as well.
Yeah, you figure they would, yeah.
Yeah, so it depends on, like, I would say bigger, like, style, like, say, Atlassian or a company like I would have dedicated data architect roles.
Yeah.
But then a smaller startup would have data platform roles, which do architecture and platform work.
With startup platform, are they considered like the data DevOps people?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so data platform is an intersection between data, software, and DevOps. Yeah. So it's all three roles.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a mix of the three roles. And then you have machine learning. So you have, but then there's two parts of machine learning. One is a machine learning engineer, and the other one is actual data scientist machine learning. So one is responsible for building the models, which is like, there's a model that I built, for example, for predicting house prices. Take all the inputs, build a nice model. Given these inputs, it can do it. But then you have to think of it like I gave you, and a lot of times you need to do this. I give you a CSV, build a nice machine learning model. So you clean the data, do all that, build a machine learning model. But then real world doesn't work like that. There's like every millisecond there is some data coming in.
Yeah.
So how do you retrain the model, make sure it's up to date? How can it be available as an API?
Yeah, there's something I've always wondered.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. So how can it be available as an API on the front? Maybe let's say, for example, real estate has this thing called real estate estimator, where the house price has estimates on how much it costs. I don't know if it uses machine learning, but let's just assume it's using machine learning. So at the back of that, there will be a machine learning engineer who's taking all this data from REA and then create a model which estimates the house prices.
So the machine learning engineers are purely creating models.
No, machine learning or data scientists, let's say, they're creating the models.
Yep.
Machine learning engineers are taking that model into production and creating the pipeline to retrain that model.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, because like, you train the model, you released it, but then there's new data coming in, you want to retrain the model.
Yeah.
And then maybe with new data and new changes, that model is probably better than the previous one, or maybe it's not so much. So how do you release that? And then also converting that model into an API is where the value is. So then when I hit, for example, inputs on the website, I get an estimate. So obviously there's an API behind it, which is extracting information from the model. So how does that all work? That's all the responsibility of machine learning engineer. I would say like data platform could help with that as well.
Yeah.
But that's the responsibility of an ML engineer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the data scientist you said was building the model.
Yeah.
All right. And that's the spectrum
Yes.
of data.
Of data.
Yeah. Okay.
As it stands currently.
As it stands.
Yeah.
That's really good. And where do you see the?
I guess there's one more digital analyst, which is like, I don't know, some teams have used data analysts for digital as well, but some companies don't. Like, you've got GA and Google Analytics, and you've got Facebook ads and Twitter ads and all that, and that needs a digital web analyst as well. So
digital what analyst?
Like a digital analyst as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so like who would like sort of not just like build your ads and stuff as well, but also use that information to make your ads more efficient and effective. So there's a digital marketing, digital analyst side of things, which is not so popular. I've seen some companies do it, some companies don't, but there's an aspect of like data in that as well.
Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's a pretty broad spectrum. So where do you think the industry is headed? Like, do you think most of those roles will stay as they are? What do you think will happen moving into the future?
It's very hard.
I know I'm telling you to you look into a crystal ball. But
Yeah. It's hard to tell, to be honest, like what, how, if they would stay the same. Part of like, I guess like 3 years ago, I did not know these roles would exist today.
No,
like
there you go.
stuff like that. But rather than, I guess like me thinking about what would be next or what would it look like, I tried to keep up with technology. So maybe that's the best way to do it rather than
So what technologies are you keeping up with now?
like just looking at like, for example, you can look at Hacker News, you can follow people that are in the space to see what technologies they're talking about. Like there's a really popular one, like I was talking about Delta Lake, Apache Udi. These are like new sort of lake formats to build in. Databricks has become very popular.
Databricks, yeah.
There's another one.
How are they changing the industry though?
I think the way that data is being produced and consumed and stored, that's changing, building more robustness and resilience around this. So all these tools, what they're doing is helping build more resilience and reliability around collection and storage of data and also query, because the volumes of data is increasing and the variety of data is changing as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just about structured data, there's semi-structured, unstructured data as well. So all these tools are making sure to make it simple. So I don't know how or like if these roles would change, but I would say one thing is for sure that one thing that I 100% think would change is the use of more software engineering in data would change. The increase of. So at the moment, for example, a data analyst is not expected to know any programming language, or a data analyst is not expected to know about CI/CD and stuff like that. Or maybe they just know, and even in, I would say 3 years ago, it wasn't expected that they know how to write SQL, but now they do. There's an expectation they should know how to write and manipulate and know about SQL. So what I would say is like what definitely is going to change is more use of software engineering in data.
Okay.
I think that is certainly a pattern that would evolve. Yeah.
Okay. So you reckon all of the roles that we just spoke about will eventually have to use more software engineering on a day-to-day?
They would be, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And also maybe with now a lot of, ChatGPT and like sort of all that tech, I also think that tech would become maybe easier as well.
When you say tech, what do you mean?
Like tools, like for example, if you think about Kafka.
Yeah.
So Kafka is very old technology. It was really hard to spin up and stuff like that. But then there's like MSK, for example, AWS. They have MSK serverless as well now. You have Confluent, where now the management and operations of that is like becoming a lot easier. So, and Airflow as well. You had Airflow before, where you had to manage it. It was a headache, but now you have like tools that like manage Airflow for you.
Yep.
So what's happening is that things are becoming easier with time in certain aspects, and in certain elements, like you have more software engineering in data where they're becoming more difficult. So I think the upside would probably become easier.
Yeah.
But then there would be more and more software. And then what that means is also like at the moment you have a dedicated, for instance, data platform team that's responsible for sort of parts of tooling and helping with that. But then eventually what I can see is that everyone that will build, they will be responsible to build and maintain their own thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's where what I mean is like more software coming into data as well. Because right now the one team is doing that, but then and you can see that already in software engineering, right? You had like dedicated, like I was saying, DevOps team and software engineer, but now software engineers also need to build their own infrastructure, maintain and monitor it, and that trend will continue on rather than having sort of a central.
Yeah, they're no longer in silos, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, in terms of like spoke about where we think the industry is headed, what's on the cards for you moving forward?
I think one thing I have like in terms of, so there's two aspects. So one is like we chatted about like me trying to dabble a lot with like sort of trying to build like my own things on the side. So if I can continue on that, is maybe trying to get like projects where I can do them, or like have a team that can do them. So more consulting in that space.
Okay. What kind of projects?
Data related. So it could be, for example, you want to build an analytics platform, or you want to build like migration projects, or any data related projects.
Okay.
That's that. But one, I guess, like appetite I have, also one thing I have in the back of my mind is like, I haven't seen what it's like working. So I've seen what it's like working in a big startup, what's like scaling, and now also what it's like building something from scratch at Motu. But something that I've not experienced is what it would be like working for like an Amazon or Google, or like one of the big tech companies.
Okay.
What it's like building. I kind of think that I might not enjoy it as much as now, because right now I have full responsibility of everything and full control. Whereas there, when you go to a big company, you're sort of like siloed in one place. But it would be interesting to see how tech, well, because all the trends and everything, or all the new things come from these big tech companies.
Yeah, they have the money to invest in R&D.
Yeah, R&D. So like what that looks like.
Yep.
From a career or job perspective, I have that. There's something that maybe I should look into next.
Okay.
But what I'm more interested in is, I guess, like trying to use all my experience for consulting.
Yeah. All right. What does your typical day look like? Because like data platform lead, it's, I think now that we've gone through a lot of the different roles, it might have kind of cleared up.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to hear.
Like work-wise? Or
Yeah,
like,
work-wise. Yeah.
My day would comprise, a typical day would comprise of, one thing I try to do a lot is, and there's some thing that like I think a lot of us should do, is like optimize their calendars at work, because there's a lot of meetings that you don't need to be in. So try to not attend those. But my typical day would look like, mornings I generally keep time for the team. So there's a lot of stuff that we're actively building. So there could be stuff where they need my support. So I generally keep half of my day free to sort of support the team. If they need help with anything, they need advice or reviews and stuff like that. Some part of my day is sitting in meetings, which is like actively alignments with other teams, because we have many stakeholders. So there's like multiple things that we need to align on, things that we're building. And then the rest of my day is spent on strategy, architecture, what that future looks like, planning, progressing. So if I have to bucket my day into three things, that would be like,
Okay. And when you say like the strategy, architecture stuff, are you doing that by yourself?
Yes, I do that by myself.
Okay. So you just get in a room, get in the zone, and just start working away.
Yeah, exactly. And then it would be, obviously it's not a, because we have many stakeholders, and that's where the alignment comes in, that something that's being built, does it align with and support everyone? Because eventually the role of a platform team, be it data platform or like just a DevOps team, is like to make life of everyone using the tools easier. So if you're building something that makes it more difficult for someone, then it wouldn't really,
counterintuitive. All right. I think we've pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover today. The only thing I think I may have discussed with you previously is the impact of AI on the, say, data industry. I know the data industry kind of feeds the AI sector in general, but how do you think it will be used to maybe even like automate some of the things that are being done?
Like in my day-to-day, I can give you an example now. I use like a lot of like ChatGPT and AI a lot in my day-to-day, and it really helps me because, for example, previously, if I had to write a design document or stuff like that, it would take me like 2 or 3 days. Now that part is really like, I think documentation wise, I wouldn't really say, so I've tried to use ChatGPT a lot for code and programming, and it's a hit or a miss. I don't think it's like as good now, but in being said that, if it's so good now, imagine what it would be 5 or 6 years later. Because a lot of people like in the news say, oh, and you know, AI is like, you know, a hit or a miss, you don't get, but I'm like, if it's just released and it's so good now, you think about what it would be like 5-10 years later. So it would only get better with time. But how it's really helping us now is especially when it comes to documentation. So for example, a design document stuff, something that I've designed and thought about, now you have to articulate that as well. So something, if I had to write it myself, it might take me 3, 4, 5, 3 days, 2 days, and then that. But then what ChatGPT does, it really reduces the time that I have to spend. So a lot of the admin work, documentation and stuff like that, engineering wise, I think it helps a lot, and a lot of people should use it. Not using it to like just like copy paste stuff or like take the ideas from there, but if you give it the idea that you're thinking about and use it to write the document rather than you writing themselves, then it really, I guess, like helps and reduce and optimize the time. But I think with time, AI would become more and more commonly used across the industry. And what that would mean is a certain set of jobs and sectors would probably reduce, but then what that would mean is maybe there are other jobs that are produced because of that as well.
Yeah, so I did see something interesting about like having kind of trend. I think the CEO of NVIDIA said it's gonna make English a programming language pretty much.
Yeah.
So then you won't really need people to write SQL queries anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have that done automatically.
Yeah.
If you write things in English. But even on that coding part, the one that you said, so there's two things to this.
Yeah.
I think personally that a lot of the time as an engineer, if you're working in a big corporate, you're kind of limited because it's hard to give the model enough context to actually get back any information because of confidentiality and privacy and all the rest of it. But if you use something like, Copilot from GitHub or those kind of products that's trained on your actual code base.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that, like, for some people, it writes 80% of their code.
Yeah, that's right.
So like, for developers in general, a lot of developers love the thing. I mean, some people are ideologically opposed, and that small percentage are probably never going to change their mind. They're the kind of people that would say you have to memorize programming languages.
Yeah.
But I think we're just at the beginning when it comes to that kind of thing.
But it's an interesting thing because like if now Copilot and all these tools have automated so much of software engineering, it would just get better and better with time. So then would you really need so many engineers? Would you need so many people? So like anyone who's wanting to get into the industry now, or even like for us, like we're in the industry, what does that look like in 10 years?
Yeah.
Like maybe if you have a team of 50 engineers, do you really need 50 people anymore? Maybe you need 10. And actually like now as well, actively now in data platform as well, like this conversation always comes up before and now as well. Like, do you need that many people? Like at Linktree, we only had like 4 people, 3 people like running the whole platform.
Yeah.
And so the number of people that you need is reducing because these tools are becoming easier. So that's also something I think we'll continue on where you don't need such a big engineering team. You need smaller teams, but then that would mean that there's competition that increases.
Yeah.
With like who can be. Yeah.
Barrier to entry is less.
Yeah. It's very hard to tell what will happen, but like some things you can sort of see would happen. And that's probably one of them. And I don't know, like the common follow-up question would be, how do you really prepare for that? And I don't know, like just keep up with what's happening around, like being aware of what's happening around you.
Yeah. I think it's going to allow kind of everyone, so there'll be increased individual productivity. And there's even talk now of like what's going to be the first one-person unicorn. Like the first single person startup to hit $1 billion. And recently there was a startup that hit $1 billion with only 6 people. So that even like that race is on, like individual productivity is going to skyrocket. But I think it's interesting because ultimately each person is going to be their own company. And it's just like individuals that used to work together, it's going to be companies working together as entities. What kind of dynamic does that create?
Exactly.
And
it'd be quite interesting to see what would happen. But I think one maybe element is like, maybe it would be harder for AI to solve is like, because humans are in general, or like when you think about companies, stakeholders and stuff, we are complex in the way that we describe things. So that problem solving, so a machine would be able to solve problems given the inputs, but your inputs need to be good enough for the machine to solve the problem. So I think the people who can really understand, listen, solve problems, or really understand the problem, I think their demand would go up a lot because you're in the world where these machine learning or these AI models need that input, but then someone needs to really understand and articulate it in a way so that the problem can be solved. So that would be one skill that would be really good to like keep up with or like polish it with time is how do you really, can you articulate a problem that's really complex in a simple manner,
Yeah.
explain it, and then
It's that old adage of like, taking complex concepts and being able to simplify them.
Yeah.
Like it's been something that those that stand out have been able to do for a long time. So Prophet ﷺ was known as Jawam al-Kalim.
yeah
So he could take big meaning and reduce it to 3-4 words. So that, I think, throughout history, throughout time, even moving forward, that'll always be something that's valued. And now, like, you've kind of got a vending machine that if you give it the right instructions, it'll give you a really good answer, a really good response, and that's going to become all the more important. Well, Hamza, thank you very much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
But before we go,
Yeah.
where can people find you on the internet?
So LinkedIn is one of them.
Yep.
So you can reach out to me, message me. But then I started posting a little bit on TikTok about data, a little bit about e-commerce and stuff like that as well.
Okay.
So I have I have to work on like naming and having times of posting it. But you can find me on TikTok. LinkedIn is one of them. Probably the two places.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you links and stuff and you post them.
Yeah, 100%. We'll have them in the description, inshallah. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. That's a wrap, everyone. Thank you for coming on. You can find Muslims in Tech on LinkedIn, Instagram. Our podcasts will be uploaded on YouTube in full, and we'll break that up as well into interesting topics. And you can also find us on X, formerly Twitter. Jazakumullah khair for tuning in, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.